In this video, I am going to talk about the best products for Google Ads. Certain products and services perform much better when it comes to Google advertising, and selecting the right ones makes a huge difference to your return on ad spend and the profitability of your Google ad campaigns. So in this video, I'm going to talk about this from a couple of different scenarios. So scenario 1 would be you already have a range of products, you're an established business, and you're trying to decide which of the products that you offer should you start with, should you focus on, should you be running Google Ads to try and sell. And then the other scenario will be for people that are starting a business. They don't already have products, don't already have services. They are trying to work out which niche industry they should operate in, what performs best for perhaps the Google advertising skills that they've developed. Where can they best use those? What's best suited for that? So let's start with scenario 1, where you're trying to decide which from your existing products you want to start with, which you want to sell using Google Ads. So I'd recommend starting with your best sellers. That's the first piece of advice. That's not groundbreaking. It's fairly obvious, it's fairly logical, but I see advertisers not do that. And you want to start with your best sellers because what's sold elsewhere really well, whether it's other online advertising platforms or offline or in-store or whatever it happens to be, those are likely to be your best sellers when it comes to Google Ads as well. Remember, when we're advertising on Google, we are advertising to real people. Real people behavior is often quite consistent across advertising platforms, in store, online, etc. Okay, so start with your best sellers. Now, if you don't know what your best sellers are, or you have fairly consistent sales across your product range, the next piece of advice I would give is to start with your highest priced items. And the reason why is because it doesn't often cost you proportionately as much to sell a higher price item as it does a lower price item. So I'll give you an example to help explain. Let's assume it costs you $15 in Google ad spend to sell a $40 item. Okay, that's not unusual. It's unlikely to cost you 10 times as much to sell an item that is worth 10 times as much. So, if it's $15 in Google ad spend to sell a $40 item, it's unlikely to cost you $150 in Google ad spend to sell a $400 item. So in terms of when you run the numbers and run the math, the higher priced items often work out better, because if it's 10 times as much in terms of the cost, it might only cost you 3, 4, 5 times as much from a Google ad spend standpoint to get someone to purchase that. And there is sort of one extra point that I want to make around selling your higher priced items. You also want to factor in margin. Now, I'm assuming, and this will apply to most, that your higher priced items are also going to be the ones that you make the most profit on. That's not always true. So when we're talking about highest priced items, you also want to factor in margin, because if you make more from a sale, that is so beneficial not only to your business for obvious reasons, but also to your advertising efforts. The objective here is to make as much money as possible from the Google ads that you're running. That is so much easier to do if when someone purchases, you make a lot more money. And I think when it comes to Google advertising, any form of marketing, people get obsessed with trying to lower the cost per conversion, trying to get that cost per lead, cost per sale down as much as possible, get the Google ad campaign performing as well as they possibly can. But actually, often it's a lot easier to increase your average order value, increase how much money you're making when someone does actually purchase. Both numbers affect your ROAS, your return on ad spend, and often that's the one that gets ignored by marketers, entrepreneurs, because they think it's all to do with the ads. And actually, if they can sell something more valuable, sell something they make more money on, it doesn't matter if their cost per conversion goes up by 20%, 30%, because they're making 3 times as much money when someone actually purchases. And again, the objective here is not to pay as little as possible for your conversions. The objective is to make as much money as possible, and that's a good way of going about it. So that's what I'd recommend. Go for your best sellers, go for your highest priced items, and make sure that those have strong margins and you make a lot of money. Because if you make a lot of money on the back end, you can put more money into your ad campaigns on the front end, and that is a competitive advantage. Okay, so we're going to move on to scenario 2 in a second. Before we do, just want to quickly let you know about our done for you Google advertising services. So my company can create, manage and optimize your Google ad campaigns for you. We can take that workload off your hands, help you get much better results. Now, let's talk about scenario 2 where you're starting a business. You don't have products that you already have to advertise. You can choose which product should I find, which niche, what should I go for. I would recommend that you pick an industry, pick products in an industry where it is very usual for those products to be very expensive, for you to charge a high price. Kind of a continuation from what I talked previously, but this is taking it to the extreme. Now, I do think it's really important to clarify here that we're not talking about overinflating the price. We're not talking about charging more than the competition and just...
Don't you think we should maybe ask for more than $1 million?
You absolutely want to be price competitive, but it is much easier to be price competitive on a product that typically costs $25,000 than a product that costs $50. Because if a product typically costs $25,000, there's probably a lot more margin to work with, probably stronger discounts you can give than something that typically costs $50, where the margins are really tight and the competitors are really competing on price. And it's all very difficult with those markets where it is absolutely standard for something to cost thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even more. It's a lot easier to be price competitive. You also want to pick an industry and pick products where you can then take that really expensive product and make it unique, customize it. The easiest way to do that is often going to be with some sort of design element. I'll give a few examples in a minute, but you want a way to stand out from the competition. That's going to help with all advertising, especially with your Google ads. And I'd also recommend you focus on products where there is already established demand. Now, of course, it is possible to sort of create your own category, invent something new, and sell products that people don't already know about. But it's going to be more difficult from an advertising standpoint because you first need to explain what the product is, how it works, and why people might want it, and then you can get the sale. Whereas there are other industries where there's already lots of demand for those products and you can tap into that. It's going to be easier for you as a Google advertiser to get someone from where they already are to sale, as opposed to having to take them through the entire process yourself. So let me give you a couple of examples, and I'm going to frame this in an answer to a question I get all the time. People come up to me all the time and they say, if you had to start all over again and you didn't have your contacts and you didn't have much money to play with and all that sort of stuff, what would you do? Would you create the same business? Would you create a marketing agency, or would you do something different? People, of course, ask that because they want to know what they should do when they are getting started. But it's given me a chance to really think about that. And if I did have to start all over again, what would I do? I don't think I would create a marketing agency. It's a great industry to go into. I don't think I would do that. I think what I would do instead is create a brokerage, a company that helps people buy and sell either luxury yachts or private jets, some of the most expensive items possible. And the commission on that is going to be such a large number that you're always going to be able to blow everyone else out the water when it comes to advertising costs. You can always pay way more than other advertisers in other industries. I know, obviously, when you're advertising on Google, there's going to be hyper competitive search terms that are incredibly expensive to reach. But there are all these other networks across Google that you could advertise on, YouTube and the display network, where you are competing against other advertisers in all sorts of different industries. And you're going to be able to absolutely blow them out the water because you can spend so much more to reach people than other industries because you earn so much more from a customer that comes through. As a side note, it's also really quite straightforward to operate a business like that from an operational standpoint because you only need a very small number of customers to still have a relatively large business. And there's not tons of moving parts. It's not like selling a $30 e-commerce product where to get into the millions or tens of millions in terms of revenue, you need all these customers and customer support staff and distribution and logistics, and you need this whole army. With something like what I described, a brokerage for luxury yachts or private jets, you could operate with a very small team but still have a very large, very profitable business. Now, I do want to be very clear that this doesn't mean you can't have success with other types of businesses. We have clients with all different types of businesses, many with low AOVs that do sell low value e-commerce products, for example, and they can still have a lot of success. I don't want to put anyone off or think that you have to go to the ridiculous extremes that I've just described. But I'm talking about this from a standpoint of if you can completely choose which products you're going to sell and you're looking to start a new business, that's how I would think about it. These are some of the things that I would recommend doing.